Yeah, so welcome to this webinar about the Norwegian Professional Football League project to build the progressive web apps for all the clubs and also the leagues. So this is a very interesting and innovative project. I think Thomas and also Seeds has been doing like more than most others in this area. So it will be really exciting to see this presentation. So first up, we have Thomas. He's the head of media and CDO at the NPFL.
Yes, thank you. Really looking forward to this, and hopefully you will see some things that you haven't seen before or thoughts that will be presented. So let's dive right into it. As Morten says, I come from Norsk Toppfotball in Norwegian. That's Norwegian Professional Football League, and the theme for what I'm talking about is like, we like to say we go all in for PWA, and I will show you why. But first, a bit about myself. Who am I? I'm Thomas, obviously. I work as a CDO, head of media, head of technology in NPFL. As you see on the pictures over there, I've been working also for a club back here where I live in Fredrikstad from 2007 to 2012. So I've joined the league after that and working with all our joint solutions. We have quite few of them where PWA is one of the latest one. As you see at the last picture there, my hobby is not, even though I've worked with football, my hobby is kite surfing. So that's me when I relax and don't think about PWAs or football or anything when I'm up in the air like that. And I have to also admit that there's something else that always is on my mind, and that's Star Wars. So be aware there could be some references in this presentation. If you want to link up with me, use that one. First of all, Norsk Toppfotball or Norwegian Professional League, we are the league organization for Eliteserien and Obos-ligaen, the two top divisions on the men's side in Norway. We are 50 years old. We are celebrating that tomorrow. So we started in 1972, and we recently made our strategy because we are going into a new interesting partnership with TV2 next year. So our vision now is like very easy. Eliteserien and Obos-ligaen where dreams meet. And for us, it's important to work with dreams and possibilities. And you see that guy over to the right corner there. Probably most of the people in the world knows him. He came from Bryne. He was in Molde. Both those teams were in our leagues. So our mission is also important because we are a league organization. And what should a league organization then focus on? So we try to make the difference. When the club can do some things themselves, it's much better that they do that, but very often it's good for them to join their forces and do this from the league. That's more cost effective and it's more sustainable, and it's also easier to have a long-term view of it. So we then work to optimize all the competitiveness of our clubs and our leagues in all we try to do. You see the image to the right side. One of our main goals is to help the clubs to fill the stadiums. So we have a lot of spectators out there, and that's kind of the gasoline for everything, which makes everything be a part of this dream. So since I joined NPFL in 2012, we've had like a continuous focus on all these joint solutions that we have provided. And we try to be very future orientated based on which kind of platforms we choose, and we can work on them over time. So I will shortly go through some of them. The media platform that we have today was launched on Enonic we started in 2016 with that one, but we started with the first media platform in 2012 with an English company. It was the same principle, but it was a mess when it came to do changes and having control of your inventory and changes and possibilities. So it was kind of like a a dead end. And while we went into Enonic and together with NetLife and Seeds, I think we made a very good platform for all our clubs, which is a very high standard for the clubs, and they like it a lot. We have some marketing tools as well, joint CRM systems. We have different social media connections, etc. Everything going into the marketing tools, so we know a lot about the customers. The things I mentioned now is things that are obligatory for all the clubs. So we have 32 clubs, but from time to time, some of them relegate. So if they want to stick on the platform, they do. So on the media platform, on the CRM systems, we have like 39 clubs now, 7 relegated, and we use it for the 2 league sites as well. We have made a lot of insights tool as well, because it's important for our clubs to know the value of their product. Where are the fans? How is the visibility of the brands, etc. And we try to do that in a way that it's easy presentable for the clubs to take that to the market again. We started in 2014 with or 2012 we started, and we launched in 2014 a Wi-Fi onboarding system, which made customers, we gave Wi-Fi through our contribution net into the arenas, so users could connect to our Wi-Fi and through our landing pages, and then we harvest customer data and we gave them something more when you are at the venue. I'll come back to that later on. 2019, we had a joint ticketing system. You see on the left side there, Ticket Co is a joint ticketing company for our platform. And we launched a fantasy game in 2017. And we also have a sports analysis tool, which is tactical cameras that we have in place on all venues. So in order to make the sporting development better, to use technology to be better at performing soccer, the analysis, both live and after the matches. And lastly, we are now looking into the NFT market with a lot of interesting possibilities there. So we like to say that our league, when we talk to the other leagues in the European League, we are kind of leading because we have done so much jointly. That's strange for the other countries. Sweden is very similar to us because they use a lot of our solutions as well. But our strategy is based on what is possible, what is the needs from the commercial, the market, and the sports part. So all our digital initiatives, they will first of all ensure that we have the ownership of control of customer and content. Then we shall have that our digital initiatives will improve our competitiveness and attractiveness, both our leagues. And then we also work with the right holders because we want to increase the value for the right holders. So it will be even better at next stage and next stage and next stage to make this even more commercially attractive. And lastly, we are working on securing ownership of data, that we as the soccer industry will own our own data, so we don't have to buy it from other sources. So that's a huge project as well. That's a big background. Then we go, the first movie picture coming there, you see the road so far. Those of you who have seen that movie probably know the guy, but we are talking about the PWA, Progressive Web Apps today. Starting off with something that you probably know a lot, these two buttons, Google Play and App Store. It's like the battle of giants. Some countries, App Store is the largest one. In some other ones, you have Google Play. From our view, we have to work with these systems, and it has been kind of a lot of pain, a lot of costs, and a lot of irritations that we hopefully you will see that we kind of have solved now with the PWA approach. So going back to Star Wars again, this Android guy it seems to me like R2D2, and I think that C3PO should be kind of the Apple. Maybe he has one who has bitten from the apple. He always do things strange. But as Obi-Wan Kenobi says, these aren't the droids you're looking for. Or maybe if I would say it, these aren't the stores you're looking for. So let's move on and see why from our perspective. Our app history, that started first in 2012. That's when we launched our first apps on both these platforms. Cost a lot of money, a lot of updates, a lot of changes, a lot of things that has to be redone. We already had it in our media platform version 1. We did several updates, and then in 2014 we launched this thing together with Cisco, which I talked about earlier, where we have this clips and Wi-Fi solutions where you see clips of all events in the venue when you are connected to the venue. And this was not easy to do, so Cisco said that they should do it, but after 1 year they say, no, this is not possible. We can't do it the way you want, because we want everything to be as close to live as possible, near to live as we call it. So they pulled their product back for the market and left us with the opportunity to find out how we should do this ourselves. So we made, together with Norwegian company, we made our own OTT solution, which helps us deliver near to live clips of all events on the venues. We only had like 3 clubs that went all in on the Connected League solution, and of course the 2 league apps. So we had like 5 apps together, and as I talked about, we have 41 clubs on the platform. Our money is the club's money, so it's not good for us to focus on only few clubs. We had several issues, a lot of mating. One example there is like when we got Norsk Tipping as the new general partner. It took 3 months before App Store would like to verify our latest update with just having Norsk Tipping inside as a general partner. There's nothing else done. It was much back and forth, very irritating. And so in 2022, then we kind of listened to Obi-Wan and we went all in, and we retired every old native apps and went all in for all our PWAs. So what do I mean when I talk about these near to live clips? As now it is when you are in venue, and if you look at the match and there's something happening, we together with the broadcaster, we tag everything, and these are into our MAM, media access management system, but it was not accessible for the fans, so we made that accessible. You can see this through these 2 links. If you go to highlightseliteserien.no or obosligaen.no, you will find this is the front end of the back end, so on this solution that we have integrated into PWAs as well. And just to show you shortly what this does, this is 100% automatically. Based on the clips, this will take 2 to 5 seconds after the click or the tagging is given. Then we have it live on the venues that have Wi-Fi today. And as you see, it responds very fast. This is a goal from Bodø Glimt from one of the last matches they have played when they won 6-0. So a lot of goals to gather from that one, but all the tags, as you see down here, is available, and you will see you can go into everything, and these things are made accessible into our match center on the club's pages as well when the match is going on. So as you see, there's a lot of things, easy to go back and forth, and we have the archive back to 2017, so you can choose whatever team, whatever incident, whatever player you want to go through. Here you see all the current runs. If you go to the last match where Molde won and won the series this year, you'll see all the things that's happened. So this is important when we wanted to build the PWA. How can we make this accessible inside the PWAs as well? Another guy from the movies, probably some of you have seen him, is called Klaus, and he's a hybrid. He's a hybrid between a vampire and a werewolf, and that gave him some superpowers. The reason why I put that picture up is like you can kind of explain how PWA as a hybrid, because it has the best things between the website and our apps and combines both worlds and making it even more powerful, and it also is accessible on all different platforms and systems. So very shortly, the progressive web app is, for us, it's been an interesting journey. We delivered this kind of on time. It was a strict project, a huge project. But what we saw is like it was very fast, and it was had the ability to work like an app. It seems like an app. It creates an app icon on the desktop. But as soon as you download it once, then it's always will be upgraded as soon as you have access to internet. Another thing which is important for us is like it's good for SSO, not for CEO, because we have now the possibility to let the search engine go into the PWAs, and they can then index it, and it will give us better rankings on the search engines as well. Egil will come back to this afterwards because he will do the technical thing. But from my perspective, what I also always like to say is like, since we had the media platform, we have done so much on the media platform, we were able to almost reuse 99% of the code from our media platform. And that was not the case when we had to use all the native apps, where we had a lot of costs, etc. So kind of now we have one system to rule them all. So we provide 41 PWAs, which is much cheaper for us with 5 native apps, and we decide when things go live. When we push things going live, it's immediately live. It's not dependent on, you have to go through the processes on App Store and Google Play. Google Play has been very fast, so they are not a problem on that one, but App Store, I'll always have to use the phrase sorry Mac when we send something there, because there's always something that comes back and it takes time. Irritating. So as I said, once our apps now are downloaded, the user never has to update. And probably you recognize that picture because, yeah, like 67 different apps that should be updated. And there's not that many people that actually do all the updates. And that's a problem. With the PWA, as soon as they are connected to internet, they will get the latest version. So if you would like, please download and test it for yourself. Go to Eliteserien or glimt.no or moldefk.no or wherever you want, and then you can see how it works. One of the things that we had to concentrate on is like, how do you get it? Because people, they tend to go to the App Store and search for it, and now it's not there. So we had to make information on how to do this. And as you see, if you are on an iOS device, you will have to use the button in the bottom there and add the shortcut. It seems strange, but it adds actually the app to the phone. Much easier on Android, because there we have the possibility, as you are used to add Eliteserien on the start screen, as you see down there. On PC, Mac, everything, it's also possible to use it. And you just click on the top beside the address bar, and then you install it, and you can use it also from that device. So that's something that we had before, hadn't had before. And now, of course, it also works with Windows phones, everything. So that's very good. Just showing a bit about the app. This is a splash screen. The splash screen that took some time to update other places. And as you see, this is a total app-like feeling. We upgraded the mobile pages as well, so they look very, very similar. But this is the app version of it. You see that it's reacting quite fast. It's has a menu system coming up like this. And when you go into our article, it's the same thing driven by the Enonic engine. So it shows the same thing, that our editors has to focus on only being one place and not looking at other feeds, other things, how to update that one. This is probably a thing that you are familiar with. There's a new picture now, I think, but this is just to show you the thing I talked about when it came to App Store. We created, or together with Citizen, a PWA splash integrator or splash generator. And here we just upload whatever we want to be the advertisement that we put in front of the app when it launches. And when we push it live, it's live. Easy as that. And that's very understandable for people working in the clubs as editors as well. Last thing we have added on this one is like the SSO system. So we are using Lime as a CRM system in the backend, and we are connected with Idrettens ID, which is an ID provider from NIF, which is usable for all clubs in Norway. And if you just see how this is still inside the system, how it works, you get a login. This is on a test now, so we are doing a test base. It is in Norwegian, but I have users, but just log in here, and I go to Idrettens ID, and when they have like, I think 700,000-800,000 users there already. When I log in, we connect with Lime CRM, and we can change our profile, and we can do like all our consent changing if you want to do that. So we have 5 different consents, and if we just do these buttons like this, we update directly into the system. So going back to Star Wars again, I'd say like Joda, it's difficult to see always in motion the future is, but I'm 100% sure that PWA will be an important part of it. You need to think this way. It's very easy to as soon as you have it, to not concentrate on the App Store development, etc. I think there will be a change. The thing that has the only thing I feel we are missing now is the push messages, but that will Egil come back to in the technical part, why we haven't that yet. I can give you like 2 words for that one. It's sorry Mac again. So I think that's all, folks, on my end.
If someone is wondering about anything, just put your question in the chat. We have a couple of minutes to answer some questions, or we will just give the word to Egil. We actually had a question now. Taking payments using PWA. I'm not sure if you have tried that yet, Thomas, doing payments with the PWA.
No, not yet. Our joint ticketing system is like we do the payments and reroutes is to that one for the time being, but that's definitely something which is interesting in the future roadmap.
There is a payment API, so there's kind of a standard way of doing payments. So yeah.
And I see there's one question from Alan Semmen over there as well. If there are content updates shared between several clubs, and we already had that in place on the media platform. So since the PWA is just working off it, it's when we share, it's shared with those we share with. So we have the ability to share with the whole league or to several clubs content that we make at NPFL, which is content that is relevant, for instance, for Brann. We will share with Brann, and we have the ability to push it live, or we have the ability to just make it ready for them, and they have to publish it.
I hope you're able to see my screen. My name is Egil Fujikawa Nes. I'm technical architect in Seeds. Before starting with the technical architecture, I consider myself a sysadmin and done sysadmin for 25 years. But as a part of being a sysadmin, the development side and working with code have kind of been of second nature and a necessity to work in the sysadmin side. So a bit of my history. Some of you might know a Norwegian site named hardware.no. Before the Y2K, in the end of the last millennium, I was part of building that site. Today, it's better known as tech.no. After that, I worked with building hosting companies, built data centers around the world. Had my own company with 6 data centers and about 5,000 customers. So I'm quite familiar with the problems and the challenges in scaling infrastructure. And in this project and in the NPFL work in general, scale is an important factor of how we're able to serve all the different clubs and at least and not least the supporters. For the last 10 years, I've been working in Brazil, working with a lot of really excited projects there. Worked with streaming for Copa America in 2012, worked related to World Cup in 2014 and the Olympics in 2016. And have been involved in projects with up to 50 million daily users. So kind of the scale and working on scale is something that really interests me and I have a bit of experience in. And now I'm working in Norway in Seeds, as Thomas and Morten mentioned. We're working with some of the most interesting companies in Norway, building cool solutions, cool products, and been lucky enough to be a part of the team that's working on the NPFL project. I'm not alone. I'm the one talking here today, but we have a team of great developers, great product people, tech leads, and so on that have been working to get this PWA project off the ground. So as probably everybody's aware of by now, I'm here today to talk about how we're building PWAs and a bit about the challenges. The agenda for today is first, I will talk about the plan, how we plan to build a PWA and kind of how everything looked pretty and nice on paper. And then we'll go through the reality, what actually happened, the hurdles that we had to jump through. And it's always, easier to talk about the problems that we're facing when we in the end know that we had a successful launch before the series started this spring. The goal when we were tasked with this project was not necessary to build a PWA. The goal was to build an app-like experience, a bit less like Thomas was talking about. An app is not necessarily only an installed app, even though that's kind of the assumption. There's a lot of different app experiences, and the clubs were not that focused about the technology itself. So we started with a broad project to look at all the different possibilities. It was really nice to be able to work with somebody so professional as NPFL, where we had the possibility to actually go out in the market looking at the different technologies and weigh the pros and cons of all the different technologies. Thomas had talked a bit about the native apps. We were, of course, looking at the possibility there with Kotlin versus Swift and how this could work. A costly kind of and hurdlesome development process. There's also rules regarding template apps and so on that comes into play when you're working with the deployment on the scale as NPFL is doing. So we decided in the end to put that at rest, the idea of the native apps. And we worked further to look at the hybrid approach. The hybrid approach will normally be a React Native approach. We have in the past done some React Native project, had some experience in that field. We know that we have the advantages of having one code base. You have the advantages of using experience that you have in React, but you still have the hurdles in order to publish through the app stores. And you also have the challenges when it comes to doing QA on two different devices. And we've seen that even though React Native can be an approach to easily get an app up running, and maintaining a React Native app over time, keeping up with the development and all the changes, the bridges to the two different native development environments are challenging and costly. And you see that often companies that work at scale in this space find that it's not a cost-effective way of working. The main reason to work is to use with React Native is to use the existing experience and knowledge about the React framework. Mobile web is, of course, also a possibility. Keep the existing setup as is, but you will automatically lose a lot of the features, and especially the app-like feeling is very difficult to recreate with a simple mobile web page. So in the end, and as this talk is about, and there should not be any surprise by now, the choice was to go with the PWA approach. There was some really good reasons for this. It's scalable. We're working with 41 different apps here, and we need something that are able to scale, that we don't need to have a lot of overhead when it comes to deploying the updates. It supports all the core features soon. Back to the push notification that Thomas mentioned earlier. We're going to talk a bit about where it is and where it's in the pipeline at the moment later. Then it's installable-ish. We've been looking through this. One of the key features that the clubs were talking about when we did the pre-project is to be able to have their own icon on the home screen. And with PWA, both on Android and on iOS, you're able to get your own icon on the home screen, and the way that it's installed, it's a bit different than the process that currently are considered the industry standard. However, we believe that in a few years, the way of installing and the way of handling PWA also on iOS is going to be a lot smoother experience than what we're seeing today. And of course, as Thomas mentioned, the total cost of ownership. So a 12-step plan was developed for the NPFL media platform that's built on Enonic, and how to enhance it and how to bring it forward. With PWA as one of the cornerstones in that work. We then set out to actually starting the project, and we need to figure out, does anybody have experience? Does anybody have experience in developing 40 plus PWAs, deploying 40 plus PWAs at the same time? We have done PWAs before. We have done PWAs from scratch before, normally one-off projects. The projects are usually then a lot easier to deploy because it's built in as a PWA native app to start with. So we did like any professional do. We go to Google, we look at the experience of others, we look at talks about PWA, we're trying to figuring out what is the body of work that others have done that we can leverage in doing the PWA deployment. And all the results, all the data, all the information that we find was basically PWA and Workbox together with GraphQL is the way to build PWA. The problem is that this is very much based on the idea of having native new application that's built natively, only being PWA. The problem that we were facing is that NPFL have already made over 6 years of investment into an existing media platform, and the investment it's based on training. They trained more than 100 editors that are currently working actively publishing content into Enonic today. They are familiar with the setup, with the parts, the way that everything is structured in the NPFL media platform. We have an existing code base, existing content base of more than 100,000 articles that are written by a lot of different editors with different standards, different ways of writing. Some are writing directly into the platform, others are copying and pasting from Word. And we know how beautiful the HTML code that gets out of Word into Enonic look like. So we have a content base that we need to preserve, and we need to make sure that it looks good in an app environment. We also have a lot of integrations. So we have 6 critical integrations to get data, to get highlights, to get the CRM integration, as Thomas mentioned, that are working. They're solid integrations. And that's one of the things that often when you're looking at projects and how to approach project are not valued enough. We have a battle-tested code base. This is a code base that have been tuned over the last 6 years. Bugs have been removed. Everything is working nicely and working as expected for the users, for the editors, for the readers. So the question was then, are we really going to rewrite the code base to be all GraphQL and doing all the right things in order to do a PWA the way that everybody says that a PWA should be written? Our approach was, of course, no, we cannot do everything. Again, that will be an all too big project. It will be all too much risk. We have to find a middle ground, how to take the existing Enonic platform and the existing code base that are developed for the NPFL platform, how to make that available in a PWA setting. So we continued. We started with a plan to establish a PWA platform with React and Workbox in order to have all the tooling, all the infrastructure that's required in order to have a full-featured PWA. We keep the current code base with server-side rendering, so all the template, everything that you see that Thomas showed about articles and so on, are still generated server-side with the time-lift template language. And a very important thing, we created the service worker that is self-updating. And this is a key part because you really want the service worker to handle and being able to push new updates automatically. And this is something that are not necessarily out-of-the-box functionality. And we have been experiencing this in other projects, that if you're not setting up your service worker in the PWA correctly, you're ending up with a situation where the customer, the user, have to uninstall the app and install the app again in order to get an updated service worker. So this is something that we were aware of, and we were very focused that the updates is gonna be seamless, and in the moment that a new feature is ready, it's gonna be propagated to all the users at the same time. We also did some native PWA work. We refactored the match module with all the data scoring. We're going to look a bit more into architecture there later. Into React, using the APIs and using everything in kind of a headless approach as you would do in a PWA setting. We implemented stadium detection, Wi-Fi detection, so that the PWA are going to be able to identify if a user is on the stadium or not, and should have access and rights to look at the previews and the highlights from the match. And then the main mission, we created an app-like experience. A lot of the app-like experience is actually, when we're working with it, is coming down to having the right animation that people are familiar with in a mobile app, and having especially things like lazy loading of resources, images, and so on happening in a smooth way. Of course, together with caching, which is it's our own topic, and we're gonna dive into deeper. So everything sounds quite simple, right? That's a project. We could go ahead, we can start to develop, and it should be shipped in no time. Well, the reality is a bit more complicated. I'm going to go through some of the challenge that we had right now, and not too much looking into the code, but kind of the practicalities and where we hit roadblocks and where maybe you're able to see some possibilities to improve your next PWA project. So the first thing is cookies. Cookies are usually something that you don't think too much about in applications, because applications have access to local storage rights. So a local storage, when you use local storage, you do not need things like cookie banners and so on. That was our assumption. That's how we went into it, because we are controlling this infrastructure. We are going to store all the data into the local storage of the PWA. Well, we was wrong. even though we are not using cookies, we don't need to rely on this technology. We see that others that are integrating with PWA, other systems like Google AdSense, and so on, they're still using cookies. They're still using cookies within the PWA. So we had to implement a cookie screen in the same way, or a cookie banner in the same way as we do on the web page for the PWA because of this type of third-party integrations. Another assumption we had, it's related to the splash screen. Thomas have kind of showed a bit in advance here. So we kind of went into the assumption that the splash screen is more of a technical placeholder that are used to load the application, and they should disappear as quickly as possible when the application is ready to use. However, in the case of NPFL and the clubs, the splash screen is an advertisement inventory where they are placing information about the sponsors and so on. Some clubs have special sponsors only for the app, and they want this functionality in order to be able to update the splash screen dynamically. Well, this should be easy enough. Splash screen are something that are defined in the HTML DOM of the PWA. You're specifying that it's going to be a startup image, and that's it. However, the startup image on iOS, it's only loaded on the install of the PWA. So it's loaded once and only once, and that image that's specified as splash screen will be loaded every time the PWA is loading forever. The problem with this is, of course, as you can see, when you change sponsors, when you want to update the splash screen, it will not be updated for the existing installation base, and it will not be updated until somebody is reinstalling the application, the PWA on their phone. So the solution that we came up with, that Thomas showed a little bit of in the back end, is that we created a PWA admin tool in Enonic to build a process for the clubs to manage the startup flow. We created a two-step startup flow, where the first step in the first splash screen that are showed it's a static splash screen that only show the club logo and a little bit of design around it, but nothing related to the sponsors or the advertisers on the splash screen. And then optionally, the clubs can include a second dynamic splash screen. The second dynamic splash screen is loaded on demand every time the app is open. And we use the possibility with the time that the splash screen is available on the second splash screen is available on the screen, to have the service worker warm up the cache on the device so that more content is available in the moment that the users are being transitioned into the home page of the PWA, into the first page. This warm-up will take as much time as needed, depending on the connection of the user, but we will at least show the second splash screen for 3 seconds as a minimum in order to get the advertisement inventory that the clubs are needed. So as you can see, cache is something that's important for this app-like experience. It's really the key and the cornerstone, maybe where we spent we at least hit most roadblocks in order to figuring out how to do caching right. Because when working with mobile devices, you kind of have some limitation. We started out with the idea that we should create a cache algorithm that simply collect all possible internal links on the page that the user is, and preload all the pages, cache all the pages that the user possibly can click to, and all the resources related to these pages. That seems like, for us, like the natural idea in order to have as much data as possible available on the device and let the user have an experience like an app where the content seems to be natively stored on the device, not fetched from a server. The problem that we quickly ran into is in iOS, we can maximum have 50 megabytes of local storage. As you can imagine, images and other resources that exist on all the possible sites that are linked are quickly surpassing 50 megabytes, causing the PWA to simply close on iOS. On Android, we were able to make it technically work, but the phone turned from being a phone to being a heating device. It was really becoming hot, and was obviously not a sustainable solution to have this approach on Android either. So the next approach was then, of course, to get rid of the images, making sure that we get the data volume that we cache down, and we cache all other resources except images. Things like JavaScript and so on, we cannot really lazy load as we can do with images, because we need the JavaScript in order to trigger different statistic tasks and so on. So we went to the approach, the second attempt, to lazy load the images but cache everything else. That was a more sustainable approach in terms of getting the correct amount of data stored on the device and not being overly caching overly too much content. However, JavaScript and third-party JavaScript is not really happy about being stored in local storage and run from local storage in a PWA. We immediately saw a lot of course errors on things like YouTube embeds, on things like Google AdSense embeds, where their course rules against loading the JavaScript from the local storage on the PWA app. So what we had to do at the final solution here is that we built an opportunistic caching algorithm where we're trying to predict what is the most likely thing that the user is gonna click on next, and we cache all the resources that do not require external request to external services, or all the JavaScript that do not require request outside of servers that are within our control. That's kind of the middle ground that we ended up with. The really nice feature that we managed to implement due to the caching, due to the opportunistic caching that we're doing, is that we're able to have some of the functionality in the PWA apps also work offline. So you're able to browse articles, read articles that have already been cached, even though you're offline. Of course, things like video streaming and so on are not available. And we managed to handle a really smooth process around offline, and how to also tell the users that they're offline and they're not able to access a certain service within the PWA app. Then to the match module. This is the one that we have refactored in order to be a PWA native module. It's a part within Enonic that the clubs can choose to use or not to use. All the data are fetched from external data sources with football data. And before the match starts, when there's a new match that are upcoming match, the match module will start with the countdown, as you can see here on the screenshot from Brann. It shows when the match is happening, how long time is left of the match, and also where to buy the tickets. Then as the match is starting, we are updating the events in real time within the PWA. So as the yellow cards are happening, as the goals are happening, the the app is being updated with all the events, and you're able to also look back into the history and expand the history of the events throughout the entire match. What's important here, and it might be difficult to see in the webinar, is that in this screenshot here, I'm actually at the stadium. If you're on the stadium, you get within a few seconds a play icon beside of the event that happened during the match, in order to show the highlight, to show a replay of what actually happened in that event. And this is all based on if you're physically on the stadium or not. It's based on the right holders agreements and so on. And we're now working on expanding this functionality. But the Wi-Fi detection and the way of onboarding to the Wi-Fi on the stadium and giving additional functionality in the app is done through things like this, showing additional content for users that are in the Wi-Fi on the stadium. And then, of course, after the match, the result of the match is available right away in the top. And when the editorial team had some time to write their article about the result of the match, from the point of the view of the club, they can attach this to the module, and they will be able then to display that together with the result of the match, up until the next match is coming, and we're starting all over again with a countdown and so on. So the question is then, how did we do the implementation with the events? The thing that the approach that we had, and the way that we normally would handle this type of instant event communication with the front end is through WebSockets. However, we see that due to the scale and the needs of NPFL, we wanted to cache as much as possible. And we approached the caching in a way that we also wanted to cache this data in Cloudflare. WebSocket and caching in Cloudflare is not two things that really work together. So we went for a pool approach, where it's the app that are in given intervals, pooling new events from the servers, and the event can be then served once from the server to the Cloudflare cache, and Cloudflare is the one that continued delivering the information to the PWA of the users. Of course, not everything can be cached in Cloudflare. A very important thing is to check the stadium Wi-Fi and how, if you're online or not. This is something that we're doing by listening to the online listener in JavaScript, and we're able to check quickly if the user is actively on the stadium and if he's connected to the Wi-Fi on the stadium. This is something that we're punching through the Cloudflare cache, and we get the IP address of the user and check towards third-party services about the Wi-Fi IP addresses on the Wi-Fi and the stadium. We also need to count how many installs of the PWA that existed. This is not as easy as in the App Store, where you can get the report. However, we found a clever little trick in order to count this in Google Analytics. We changed the start URL in the manifest file of the PWA. So if the manifest file is loaded, it's loading the front page of what is the same as the front page of the website with the UTM source PWA, and that way you're able to report how many installs that you had of the PWA on unique devices. I see that I'm coming up to the end here, so I will go a bit faster through this Apple and what's the issue that we're facing with the Apple and PWA. The funny thing is, like, the idea of having web apps on mobile phone is something that Steve Jobs kind of envisioned in 2007 when the iPhone was launched. He believed that the Web 2.0 was the way of developing apps for the iPhone. Moving forward 11 years, iOS first introduced PWA in 2018 in release 11.3 of iOS without even mentioning it in the release note. And that's how far Apple now have distanced themselves from the original vision of developing application using web technology. What is the good thing and the part that we are really happy about is that Apple have announced during WWDC last year that in iOS 17 that are being released in 2013, Web Push will also be available in WebKit for iOS. We still don't know exactly what form, how they will look like, if there's any got you, but that's where we are focusing now, and we're hoping that within the next 6 months we will be able to start developing a Web Push for PWA also on iOS. So what did we ship? As we mentioned several times here now, 39 clubs, 8 series got their own mobile apps. The mobile apps were launched with all the existing content and all the existing branding of the clubs, and there were no additional work or training needed for the editors. They continue working as they always done, publishing content for them, what is content to the web pages, and it also automatically appears in the PWA. The branding part and kind of the work related to the branding, it seems easy. 39 is just a number, but when you see the variety of all the different apps, all the different logos, all the different colors that's supposed to work together, all the editors that have their different opinions about how the apps are supposed to work and how their site is supposed to be presented, it was a major undertaking. And some of these assets that we've been working with here it's some of the best known web assets in Norway. You have pages like Brand and rbk.no that have been around for a quarter of a century, and they started out in the BBS era. So this is users that are really committed to their brands, and being sure that everything is look and feels correctly is really important for each and every of the editors and each and every of the clubs. So the clubs were getting their mobile apps, and we now have the PWA as the technical cornerstone for the further development of the Enonic media platform for NPFL. That's what about it.
Yeah, thank you, Egil. We almost made it in time. So really exciting. You could probably talk about this for hours at least. Yeah,
absolutely.
We have a question about images. Did you consider caching low-res images to preserve space, then replacing them with non-cached higher resolution versions once they are downloaded?
Yeah. So that's definitely an approach that we considered, and we figured out that any type of binary storage it's kind of cumbersome enough, and the idea of generating a lot of additional images in order to handle this, it was not within the scope of what we worked with. But definitely this about loading and caching low-res images was something that's on our mind, but we went for the gray box instead, and the kind of the Facebook animation and waiting for the image to load in as a more efficient and pragmatic way of implementing it.
Yeah, good answer there. How do you handle a bad connection offline mode? Do you show previously fetched content and replace it with a new one once it's available? Do you invalidate the cache?
Yeah, so the cache is not invalidated on the content itself unless there is a new URL, a new version that's in Enonic. So in the moment that there's a new version in Enonic, the cache is invalidated. However, we are not invalidating cache in the PWA. If the connection is bad, if the connection is bad and we already have the cached content, we are showing the cached content. And if their connection is bad and we do not have a cached version, we're showing the offline page. Sorry, you're offline. We're not able to display this content at the moment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, another one probably answered that one basically, but do you have to release a new version of the PWA with every content update?
No, not at all, not at all. So we do not release a new version ever of the PWA. What we do and what we have the possibility to do is to release new versions of the service worker. And that's where the logic is that runs locally on the device. It's a JavaScript code that are the service worker, and we have the possibility to release new versions of that. It's built together with the jar file in Enonic. So what we practically do is to deploy a new jar file of Enonic, and the new service worker is then released.
And then you force the update, right? So the users get this instantly.
Yeah. So the old service worker is checking if one of the first things that the service worker is doing is to check if it has the latest version of the service worker. And if it doesn't have the latest version of the service worker, it downloads the latest version and replaces itself.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I think we are done for today. So thank you to Egil and Thomas. It's really interesting, and it's nice to see that this area is evolving and that Apple is not stalling as much as before, so even though there's things to resolve. Yeah,
absolutely. But I have great expectations about that. Also, Apple will approach more of the PWA, and we're seeing that now on the Mac OS currently, and iOS is definitely going to come next year.